Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home.
Hello, Karen.
Hey, Dan.
It's still cold. It's still winter, right? But it was very cold, and the propane tank got refilled quite rapidly.
Oh, no.
Or should I say it got depleted and then filled.
Yeah.
It depleted rapidly.
Yeah, for sure. There was a lot of energy use last month. I know my electric bill went crazy. My gas is on a balanced thing, so that's not going to show as much, but I'm sure it's going to go up.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to adjust. I mean, we'll see. It's all about averages, and you can't really tell like how far off you are off budget until you're done with winter.
Yeah.
So too soon to tell.
Yeah. So speaking of budgets, I hope that everyone budgeted their hay properly, and they should probably have about half their hay ready to go before they can start feeding out in pasture in spring. So hopefully you were able to access the hay that you needed to replenish what you did not get out of your fields. And if not, maybe look towards buying some so that you're prepared and not panicking at the last minute.
That's right. Yeah, just there's a lot to figure out. Now is a good time to remember you probably have another 2 months minimum of feeding hay because you're not going to see grass growing too fast in March. I could be wrong. I guess it could happen, but it's not expected. Even April's a little early. So expect a minimum of 2 months of feed supply to be safe.
But things are starting to ramp back up for our farms. There's a lot of seeds getting started in greenhouses and ready for planting out in high tunnels and such like that. But another thing that a lot of our farms are working towards is making sure that they can safely apply their pesticides and get some training up on that.
That's right. It is pesticide training season for Ohio State Extension. People are recertifying all over the state, from the West Virginia border to the Indiana border.
And you don't have to live in Ohio to attend these pesticide applicator trainings, but it is for the private pesticide applicator license of Ohio, right?
Well, yes. So the extension offices do help recertify private pesticide licenses. There are commercial licenses, of course, that we typically do not statewide at a mass scale recertify with. It's an agreement with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, but we can help train for both exams. In fact, we do host Ohio Department of Ag in our counties so that people have the opportunity to take the exam, and if they want a private or commercial license, they would have the opportunity to take the exam. So we are hosting Ohio Department of Ag at the Belmont County office on March 27th. It's going to be a range of times from 10 to 2. You can take as many tests within that time period, but you should register for the exams. So make sure that you either go to the ODA's registration website and find Belmont County on March 27th, or you can call me and I can help you get registered myself at the Belmont County office. There's another testing that's being hosted in Woodsfield. So that's Monroe County, April 17th, again from 10 to 2. And that one requires registration as well. Sometimes there's only so many people that the examiners can host at one time. So once you reach capacity, that's it. And if you didn't register and the place is full, then you really can't come in and take the test there. And then you might have to wait longer or travel to ODA over in Reynoldsburg to take it.
So best to register early then?
Best to register early if it's something that you're thinking about that you want to do.
How would you register?
So you can do it online at the Ohio Department of Ag website. You can search for registering for pesticide exams under the Ohio Department of Ag. and you can navigate the site that way, or you could just call me, and I'll be happy to either email you the link because that's really long, or or I could just or you can call them. You can call them and register over the phone. I think they would accommodate that. If not, you can call me and I'll get you registered, walk you through it, whatever we need to do, get you set up to go.
Sounds great. Is there a fee for the class?
There's no fees for the testing. Basically, the fee comes after you pass and you need to process the paperwork to get your license. Then you get the fee. There is a prep class. It's going to be March 24th at the Woodsfield office in Monroe County, starting at 3 p.m. So March 24th in Monroe County and Woodsfield at their extension office at 3 p.m. I would call the Monroe County office and make sure you register there as well, so we know you're coming. No fee for that, but those two classes are going to be before we hold the exams, both in Belmont, March 27th, and in Woodsfield at the Monroe County office, April April 17th. So you'll be able to have a prep class, take the exam. If you don't do well in Belmont, there's enough time that you can retake the parts that you fail in Woodsfield. So many opportunities, and
That's
the
right.
determination is all that you need. Well, and a study.
Studying is helpful, yes.
Yeah. So we got a little activity today. We're going to kind of go through some questions that typically are good to know for your core, which is your basic principles of pesticides. So, I say we just kind of start things off, right? So, Karen, you want to tell us what core is about?
Yeah, so core is your basic foundation, right? So it is the absolute minimum that you should know before you start utilizing pesticides. Now, so that includes how to read the label and what all those things mean, your applicator safety, like how to protect yourself and the environment while you're using pesticides, recognizing environmental hazards and situations, and of course, your pest management and pesticide principles, noting that pesticides aren't number one. They aren't your go to response. There should be other things in there first. Um, but also applications, equipment, calibration, and of course, the laws and regulations. And finally, handling transportation, storage, disposal, and spills.
Yeah, so a lot. And core is core. You have to have core, and you have to have one category. As if you're talking about a private license, categories will be category one will be agronomic crops, category two will be livestock, category three is fruit and vegetables, category four is nursery crops. So they all require you to know to pass the core test, and training materials are available at most of your extension offices, or again, ODA's website is where you can find a lot of that material too. So, you have a chance to, you're not expected to know the stuff before you need to know the stuff, right? There are materials you can read and understand and be ready. And if you do, you shouldn't have any issues with the test. If you have the materials and you read through them, most people that don't pass don't study. So just know that it's a good idea to prep for it. But you need core and one category.
And one of the things that we should point out with the core is the core information is pretty much standard across all states. So if you studied to get your core certification in Ohio, you'll probably be able to pass the test in West Virginia as well. It is those other categories where they're probably the same topic, but have a different number and differentiation and things like that. But it is the same basic information across the board. So once you know your core application, let's say if you work in 2 states or 3 states, let's say you live in Wheeling, you're going to work in Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. The core is pretty much going to be the same information across all 3 states, but you will have to do 3 separate applications for your pesticide license, 3 separate tests, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to maintain your recertification credits each year to maintain that license.
That's true. I never really thought too much about that, but I'm sure core is going to be pretty consistent because those are kind of guided by the principles of EPA too. So EPA being more of a federal type overseeing agency for the different Department of Ags. There's a lot of overlap there. But something that you will see when you pick up a pesticide, which we will talk about in a second, you see what's called signal words. There are three typical signal words that we see in pesticide containers. You have caution, warning, and danger. Caution being the least severe, and danger being the most severe. Cautions are going to be slightly toxic or relatively non toxic. Only a slight potential to cause acute illness from oral, dermal, or inhalation exposure, or to cause slight eye or skin irritation. Something that's labeled dangerous is going to be highly toxic, very likely to cause acute illness from oral, dermal, or inhalation exposure, or cause severe eye or skin irritation. And those are just kind of things to note when you're looking at different pesticides. So let's kind of play around with the question here. Karen, I'm going to ask you the definition of a pesticide.
Hmm.
Is that a man-made chemical that will kill all pests, an organic chemical that will not harm other animal, plant, or insect species, a product that kills insects only, a product of chemical or biological origin that may be used to control, kill, mitigate economically damaging, nuisance, or hazardous pests. Pesticides.
When you're looking at these kind of tests, sometimes the longest answer seems like the most accurate, right? Because there's all those it may be used, and of course it states that economically damaging, which is a critical part of proper pest management, is to not use a pesticide until it is an economic issue with your crop. And so, therefore, I'm going to say it was the last one.
That's correct. I think a lot of misinterpretation of what a pesticide is comes from just our biases. I think when we hear a word like pesticide, we assume that we're talking about insects, and that's not the case. It could be an herbicide killing plants. It could be an insecticide killing insects. It could
It
be
could be a miticide killing
mm,
mites or a rodenticide killing rodents.
or a fungicide, right? Fungicide,
Right.
something that kills fungus. But yeah, pesticide is kind of an umbrella term that encompasses several specific things. And here's another misnomer here: pesticides don't always kill. Sometimes we use the word control, mitigate. They could be reproductive inhibitors. They
Or they could
could,
just be growth control, right? It could slow down the growth of a plant.
right, right.
So a
So
growth
growth
regulator.
growth regulators, reproductive inhibitors. It could kill. um,
So control, kill, or mitigate, right?
that's right. It doesn't have to always kill.
So it could potentially then also be a repellent, right? Something that keeps something away from you, like DEET, right? So DEET would fall into the class of pesticide that's known as a repellent.
That's right. Many things could fall under that category of pesticide. So very important to know how it works so that you use it properly.
All right, Dan, I'm going to ask you a question now.
Oh dear. Okay, let's go.
All right. So, what is pesticide labeling? Is it a sticker that states the price of the product? Is it a piece of paper containing the product name and promotional information? Is it a rebate or guarantee or the information for that? Or is it none of the above?
So the label, I've heard you say the label is the law.
A
which
lot.
is which is not on here, but I would say none of those. The label is typically provided with the container, and it does describe the legal uses of it, such as how much you can apply, where you can apply it, when you can apply it, also what crops or conditions that merits that product. Sometimes you'll have something that kills a certain pest. You can use it in one instance, but you can't in another. And that's just because of the crop you're growing or the conditions in the environment. So I know I kind of jumped ahead there, but
No, yeah, good.
that information is on the label and it is always going to come with a container. Now, you have to understand that label has a lot of information.
Yeah.
It typically is one of those like magical sticker things that,
It keeps unfolding and unfolding.
yes,
It just keeps going.
well, you know what it reminds me of is the lyrics to the old cassette tapes. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like you used to buy the cassettes and then you would just, the cassettes were small, but then you'd want to read the lyrics to the songs and it would just open up like probably like 3 feet long and be very, very tiny that only the young eyes can read. So along those lines now, they don't, I think it's not easy to be able to read something in that fashion, but you can typically find the label almost always. Okay. Let's just say almost always. You can search the registration number online and you should be able to pull the PDF of that label and make it as big as you need it so that you can read it better.
That's
But
right.
you're
Yeah.
responsible for everything on there. And they do make it possible to get it many different ways, but you have to know what you're doing. You need to read the label.
Yeah. And I always recommend getting that PDF version of the label and keeping it in a folder somewhere because as you use these chemicals, sometimes they splash and spill or the bottle just gets wet. And sometimes, solvents can get on the label and cause it to discolor or become unreadable. And so it is a good idea to have a backup label. And so downloading that PDF version, keeping it in a folder on your computer or printing it out and keeping it in a folder in the barn or whatever is really a good idea.
All right. So now I'm going to ask you a question. Which of the following statements will appear on all pesticide labels? Caution, warning, danger, or keep out of reach of children?
Well, we said earlier in the show that caution, warning, and danger were your signal words, right? And so caution being the least dangerous and danger being the most dangerous. But you're not going to have all the signal words on the container. It'll be one or the other, right? But keep out of reach of children, always a good plan. And that's going to be my vote.
That's it. Yeah. All pesticides have that label. So, what does that mean? Well, that means that it's on a label, and you should not make it easy for a child to access because they are toxic. As much as it even says caution being kind of a milder type toxicity level, it still could cause harm. So keep out of reach of children.
And, I do want to point out, we said earlier today that we're talking about commercial applicators and agricultural workers and such, but this applies to homeowners too. Even if you just buy a can of bug spray or something, that does have a label on it, and you are legally responsible to follow everything that label states. So it's really important, even for just the average person, to read the label of any chemical that they're purchasing as a pesticide.
Pop quiz, Karen. Something like Raid. What kind of pesticide is it? What kind of classification?
Well, I'd call that an insecticide.
I mean, that's what I was. Yeah, that's where I was going with it. Right.
It's designed to kill insects and therefore insecticide.
That's right.
All right. So when you're reading this label, you might see something that says restricted entry interval or REI. Which of the following things will the REI tell you? The time elapsed before harvest, from what corner of the field you enter, how long the pesticide spray is active on those pests, or how much time must pass before workers can re enter a treated area.
Hmm. Restricted entry interval. It sounds to me Like that's telling you how much time you need to pass before you can re-enter an area. So that's my answer.
You would be correct.
Right. So to win $1 million.
No, you just don't break the law.
That's good. So I get to, yeah. I mean, that'll save you money too. So
This is
that's
true.
it's
This is
yeah.
true.
Penny saved is a penny earned. So if you're not getting slapped with fines, you're making money.
And you think about it, this is for your safety, right? Because you put a chemical on, let's say you're using a herbicide and you're putting it out there to kill the weeds in the field or in the garden or whatnot, or in the yard, and you're walking through that area while it's still wet, then that gets on your shoes, you track it into your house, and it can increase your chances of exposure. And that's why you see those little signs in people's yard, please keep your animals off the lawn. That's usually because they have applied a pesticide on that grass that could be harmful to animals, right? And so if you put your animal in there before that reentry interval passes, then your animal could then have increased exposure to that chemical. And so it's really important to pay attention to those signs and do try to keep your animals off of those lawns where you do see that signage.
That's right. And sometimes the REI can be a set amount of time. 24 hours is a pretty typical one. 48 hours is another one that we see out there. Sometimes it'll say something like, you can't re-enter the area until the product is dry. So it just depends. Sometimes it's less than 24 hours. Now, next question is Karen's. Okay. I'm going to ask you what a pre-harvest interval is.
Oh, yep.
Pre-harvest entry interval. So there's two big capital 3-letter acronyms that you need to know. REI, which we just talked about, and there's this one, the pre-harvest interval. So what is or PHI? So what is the PHI? Is it days between pre-emergence and post-emergence pesticide applications? The amount of time required between last pesticide application and harvest? Length of spray boom needed for a pesticide application? Or the cash amount anticipated for crop sales?
Pre-harvest interval, right? So the last question, we determined an interval was a length of time, and this is pre-harvest. So I would guess it would be the length of time between last pesticide application and harvest.
That is correct. So with pre-harvest intervals, really, really important one. What you're going to do is you're gonna find that depending on what crop you're spraying, sometimes something like a fungicide, sometimes it is an insecticide, but you're going to have different time periods that have to elapse before you can harvest that product and safely eat it. And it varies a lot. And it's very crop dependent. Many things that you can spray in both apples and grapes, for instance, have a very different pre-harvest interval, whether you're eating the apple or eating the grape.
This is true. And this is not something that's washing off, right? So this is just a amount of time that you have to wait for the chemical to go through its proper degradation process so that it does not introduce a non-permitted chemical into the food chain. And this goes for livestock food as well. One of the ones I see a lot is there's a pre-harvest interval for a lot of herbicides that you use on hay. If you want to keep the some weeds out of your hay production fields, there are some significant pre-harvest intervals on some of those. And it's going to be different for if you're raising beef cattle versus dairy cattle, simply due to the fact that the milk from the dairy animals is going to run that through faster and it's not going to be broken down as long. So
Right.
you have to pay attention to the product as well, the end product, the animal or the food.
That's right. And in fact, I'm just going to go one step further with this one. There are products that you put as it's typically an herbicide. You can apply a type of herbicide that will kill broadleaf weeds, but not kill the grass. That you cannot sell the hay from that field for over a year, but you can graze it fairly quickly, and you can still harvest the animals, take them to slaughter. without a big restriction. But it's just, again, it's how that chemical works and how it can affect consumers.
Yeah, because there's some that stick around in the manure of animals as well, right?
Right.
So if you are providing your manure to an organic farmer, the residue from that pesticide could still be in that manure, depending on what the pesticide is. And that farmer applying that manure their crop fields could kill their entire crop. So it's really important to make sure you are reading the label, the whole label, and you are keeping refreshed on it. And each time you buy a chemical, you got to read that label again because they change all the time. So they change how they work, they change what those reentry intervals are. A lot of that stuff does change as the formulations change. So you do have to, just because you read it once doesn't mean you never have to read it again. You do have to know what those labels say that you're using and stay up on the most up-to-date label for the product that you are using.
That's right. So let's end with this. Personal protective equipment. That is also on a label to tell you how to protect yourself. Now, Karen, what is the minimum? So if you're buying any pesticide, what is the minimum PPE that you should have on?
All right, so the minimum for any pesticide is going to be a long sleeve shirt, long pants, gloves, shoes, and socks.
Does it matter if it's hot outside and it's summer?
Well, that depends. Do you want to absorb the chemical into your body or would you like to not absorb it? In fact, actually, if you're sweating a lot, your pores are open, which makes it more likely for you to absorb that chemical. So it's more important in the summertime to have that long sleeve shirt, those long pants, and your toesies covered, right?
That's right. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how hot it is outside. You should be wearing long sleeve shirts, long sleeve pants, gloves, and shoes plus socks. And it doesn't specify whether you need to have the socks underneath the shoes or inside the shoes. But if you can do it the other way, I guess you're still following the label,
Yeah,
right?
just be comfy, right? Right. Oh, and if you have that long sleeve shirt on and you roll the sleeves up, that doesn't count as having a long sleeve shirt on. You have to keep the sleeves down. Now, if you wear a loose shirt, a loose light colored shirt, it's not going to be as bad as you think. In fact, you're also protecting yourself from the sun, so you'll get a double win on that.
That's right. Safety first.
Safety first, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.